Hello and welcome to So What You're Saying Is. I'm Peter Whittle. Now, if you've watched many of the interviews we've done over the past year, you'll know that one of the themes that comes up time and time again is free speech and indeed the increasing attacks and restrictions on it. You might remember that last week there was a very well publicised case. I've got the headline here from the Times: "Hate speech policing is Orwellian, warns judge." Now, this was a very, very important case, and I'm very pleased to say that the man at the very centre of it, who was in the High Court, is with me today, and that's Harry Miller. Hello, Harry.
Yeah, hi.
Thanks very much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And also you're mentioned as well in the Times Leader today, which is about free speech and free expression. This is an incredibly important moment. There will be a lot of people, who are watching the show who are not in Britain, in American places, won't necessarily know what we are actually talking about. I wonder if you could just give us a brief overview of how you ended up in the High Court.
January 2019, I was in Tesco's car park, and it was the middle of the afternoon, and I got a phone call from my managing director. Now, I own the company, and my managing director is my partner. Mm-hmm. So it's not the traditional hierarchy where the managing director rings and you sort of panic like crazy. But he said, "Really weird, Harry, we've just had a policeman turn up at work at the offices. I've not given him your telephone number, but he's given me his telephone number, and if you want to ring him, give him a buzz." So I said, did he say what he wanted? He said, "No, not at all, but he turned up in plain clothes." Like, wow, sounds a bit serious. So I rang him, and this officer answered, and he introduced himself as PC Gull from Humberside Police. And I said, "All right, yeah, hi PC Gull. What is it you want?" And he said, "Well, we've had a complaint from down south," and I live in Immingham, which is up north. Yeah. And he said, "We've had a complaint from down south. Apparently, your Twitter activity, the concern is that your workplace is not safe for trans people." And I just went, "You what? What are you on about? My workplace isn't safe for trans people?" He says, "Well, the person from down south, the victim, says that your workplace might be unsafe." I said, "Well, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not even sure we have any trans people at my workplace." And he says, "Yeah, that might be because you're a transphobe." And I went, "Is this some kind of wind-up? Is this what are you on about?" He says, "Oh, no, this is very serious. We've had a report in, and I'm ringing you up to have a word with you about it." Yeah. I said, "But this makes no sense at all." I said, "Look, let's cut to the chase." He says, is anything that I've tweeted criminal? Anything at all?" And he said, "Oh, no, nothing criminal. No suggestion of criminality whatsoever." I said, "So why are you ringing me then?" He said, "Well, I need to check your thinking."
Check your thinking?
Yeah. He said, "I need to check your thinking," which made me kind of smile inside. And I said, "All right, okie dokie." I said, "So let me get this straight. You're a police officer, yeah? And you're ringing me to check my thinking?" "Yeah." I said, "Have you any idea what that makes you?" And he went, "No." I said, "George Orwell, Thought Police." I said, 1984. It's a dystopian novel, not a police operating manual. Yeah. And the reference was like, boom, straight over his head. He had no idea what the hell I was talking about. So we had a bit of a discussion about George Orwell and dystopia, etc., etc. And I said, "Right, we've established that I've not committed any crime." I said, "What's your evidence?" He says, "Well, we've got 30 tweets." I said, "All right. Any of them criminal?" He said, No suggestion of criminality." I said, "Right, okay. So which one, in your opinion, because you've got the 30 tweets, which one, in your opinion, comes closest to the mark of being criminal? The one that if I'd just gone a little bit further, that'd have been it. It would have been criminal. Give me a worse one. Give me a very worst one out of them 30. And he said, "Right, okie dokie." He said, "Well, there's this one here. There's a limerick." I said, "A limerick?" I said, I've not written any limericks." He said, "Oh, no, you didn't write it. You retweeted it." I said, "What limerick?" He said, "Oh, it's this limerick." I said, "Well, you're going to have to remind me because I have no idea what you're talking about." And it said, if I remember rightly, it said, "Your breasts are made of silicon, your vagina goes nowhere, and we can tell the difference even when you're not there. Your hormones are synthetic. Now let's just cross this bridge. what you have, you stupid man, is male privilege, bubble. For one, I said, that's not even a limerick, mate. That's not a limerick. You need to look up the definition of limerick. He says, well, it's offensive. I said, how is it offensive? He said, well, it's offensive. I said, but you're not telling me how it's offensive. He said, well, it's anti-trans. I said, but I don't even know what you mean by anti-trans. I said, I didn't even write it. He said, yes, but by retweeting it, other people will have seen it.
Yeah.
I said, that's absolutely nuts, mate. And he says, yeah, but it's not, is it? Because the victim is very upset. I said, let's just stop right there. Yeah. You keep talking about the victim.
Yeah.
There is no victim because I've committed no crime, so how can there be a victim? And he said, well, that's just what we have to call them. We have to call them the victim. I said, why? Well, we call them the victim because there might have been a crime. I said, but before you even contacted me, you decided there was no crime. So please stop using the term victim because I find that insulting. And he said, well, that's just the term we have to use. I said, but that's absolutely ridiculous. Have you not heard of free speech? Have you not heard of evidential inquiry? I'm an ex-policeman myself. This is just nonsense. And he went on in this vein for about 34 minutes. 34 minutes he went on. But he finished off by saying this. What you've got to understand, Mr. Miller, I can barely say it without laughing. He says, what you've got to understand, Mr. Miller, is that sometimes in the womb, a female brain accidentally pushes out the wrong body parts, and that's what being trans is. I went, seriously? I says, you cannot believe that. You cannot believe that. He says, yeah, I can. I went on a course.
I went on a course.
I went on a course, yeah. I went on a course. I'm like, oh, well, there you go then. If you've been on a course, that explains it, doesn't it? Right, yeah. And I said, I just cannot believe that the police are ringing me up to give me some psycho babble biology that makes no sense whatsoever. I said, I'll tell you what, mate, you need to just go wash your socks and we're into this conversation now. So that was 34-minute conversation, 34 minutes out of my life being told about wrong think and lady brains.
I mean, you're being very good-humoured about it, and we're laughing. But this is really serious stuff, isn't it?
Well, it is serious stuff, and it's so. I went home and I said to my missus, "I had a phone call from the cops." Her immediate reaction was, "Oh God, what? Is it something to do with Twitter?" And I went, "Actually, it is, yeah." Now, what's interesting is that my wife was on Twitter as well, or had been on Twitter, and she voluntarily came off Twitter once a couple of police officers started following her on Twitter. And at the time I'd said, this is just ridiculous. You know, why would you come off Twitter? You're being paranoid, you're being ridiculous. We had a row about it. And she says, no, I'm not. I don't like it. I feel really unsafe with the police following me. I said, but that's just nonsense. The police in Britain aren't like that, you know. Chill. Take a chill pill. I've never looked good in a tinfoil hat. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. But who was the flaming mug now? Because it turns out that the police were following us. It turns out the police are monitoring what we're saying. And even when we're committing no crime, they're dispatching an officer to check my thinking. So, as usual, my wife was right.
This is this ended up being what is called a hate incident. That's what they were saying, isn't that right?
Yeah. The College of Police guidelines, which were issued in 2014. Now, the College of Policing is a quasi-government body where the responsibility for policing and setting down the standards of policing has been subcontracted out by the Home Office to a private company. And the College of Policing is a private company. Interestingly, somebody from the College of Policing wrote to me and said, please win this case because it's filled with failed inspectors and academics who know nothing. Right. That was from somebody who shall remain anonymous in the College of Policing. But that is the College of Policing. And they set these guidelines on hate crime. So the Hate Crime Operational Guidance, or HCOG, was issued in 2014, and it addresses two things. It addresses hate crime and it addresses hate incidents. Now, the difference is this. For a hate crime to be a hate crime, you have to have met the threshold of a crime. And then the hate bit is where the motivation for committing the crime is perceived or a judge to have been due to a hatred against a protected characteristic. A hate incident is where you haven't met the threshold for a crime, but the police consider it worth logging and registering, etc., because it may lead to crime. It may lead to crime. Now, my understanding is that the justification for the hate incident, hate crime thing was the Stephen Lawrence case. Now, Stephen Lawrence in the, I think it was the 90s?
Yeah, 91,
in the 90s, yeah. Was a young black lad who was brutally murdered at a bus stop by being stabbed by some white racist thugs. The police were utterly incompetent in their investigation about it. It eventually became the subject of a report by Lord Macpherson. And in the report, it was a very long report, he slammed what he called the institutional racism of the police. He slammed the idea that black people, if they ever came onto the police radar at all, it was only ever as a suspect, very rarely as a victim. It utterly slammed the police. And in a sense, what it said was, you have to take the perceptions of people who complain seriously, and that's a noble thought, actually. If you report to me that you've been the victim of a racist attack, it's no good for me as a police officer to say, well, show me your hard evidence. I didn't tape it. I haven't got. Well, forget it then. And that's why that's what the HCOG was addressing. Okay, you should take victims seriously, even if they can't bring hard evidence to the table. All very noble. But of course, what's happened is we've taken this no evidence required thing to an absolute illogical extreme, where rather than having no concrete evidence, it now means no evidence whatsoever.
At all.
None at all. So if somebody perceives an action to be hateful, it is hateful. No, there is no excuse, there is no defence. You can't give a reason and say, well, actually, I was engaging in this or I was engaging in that. Because that's what I said. We complained to the police and I said, look, I was engaged in a political debate. Okay, those tweets form part and parcel of the rough and tumble of political debate. And the context is the government has called in 2018 for discussion about reform to the Gender Recognition Act. Now, at the moment, if you are a trans person, you get protection if you have or intend to hold a gender recognition certificate. That's what the 2010 Equalities Act says. Now, there's a move to reform the 2004 GRA, Gender Recognition Act, to one of self-identification, where I don't need to get a GRC, I don't need to go through any medical process, I don't need to go through any psychological assessment. All I need to do is say, yesterday I was a man, today I'm a woman. That's it. And the government rightly saw some of the bear traps that were clearly implicit in such a move and called for a discussion. So I was engaged in the discussion. Now, of course, Twitter is a fairly unsubtle and fairly brutal medium because you don't get the chance to write long essays or anything. It's basically the market square. It's the social pub. It's the back and forth of debate, and it involves a little bit of insult and a little bit of coarse language. It's the marketplace. So this is the context that I was tweeting in. And I explained this to the police via official channels. I put in a formal letter, and they weren't having any of it. They just stuck to the line, well, somebody's complained, therefore it's transphobic. So I put in a formal complaint to the Assistant Chief Constable, against the Assistant Chief Constable of Humberside, ACC Scott Young, because he'd done a press announcement where he said, we are in possession of 30 transphobic tweets, not 30 tweets that were reported to us as transphobic, 30 transphobic tweets. Now that has already given a judgment analysis, a qualitative analysis, that the tweets are transphobic. So I said, you've got to take that down. It's just not true. And they said, no. And And I said, while we're at it, you need to remove the hate incident against my name. And they said, no, it's mandatory recording. It's going to stay there. And we said, no, you will remove it.
Where would it actually be recorded? Can you, Harry, where would it be recorded?
It would be recorded on whatever the police database is recording hate incidents. Now, initially, I wanted it removing as a matter of principle. I didn't for one second think it would have any effect on me or anybody else, but as a statistic, simply as a statistic alone, I felt that it was wrong, that there should be a statistic supporting this notion of hate, and that to have my incident included on it was giving a entirely false impression to everybody about the rates of hate incidences.
Absolutely.
So from that level, I just knew it was wrong. If we're going to have statistics, and we're going to have statistics that mean something and that inform something and that inform action, then the statistics need to be accurate. And so it was at that level that I initially began to challenge it, because it struck me as being entirely wrong,
and
entirely unjust.
These are statistics, or if there's a notification, they can presumably be looked at by future employers, things like this?
Well, initially what I thought was it becomes simply a statistic, no name, nothing, it's just hate incident. I've ratcheted it up by one number. And for me, that was enough. Even though I didn't imagine my name was attached to it, the simple ratcheting up of a hate incident I felt was wrong. So it was on that basis that I began my appeal. Now, the interesting thing is you have one go at appeal with the police, and it's the police who are judging themselves, which is not really great, is it? So the police have done this. I say the police have done this. I think it's wrong. They investigate themselves and go, "Boom, we've done nothing wrong." Yeah. And you go, "Well, you have done something wrong." "Well, we've decided we haven't done anything wrong." Unfortunately, in this case, the next stop on the way of appeal is the High Court via judicial review, and that costs. You need to put up around about £150,000. That's what you need to budget for a High Court appeal. Now, who can do that?
Exactly.
Who can do that? So, of course, most people, the vast majority of people, are just going to take it on the chin. In fact, I had a radio interviewer months ago say to me, "Harry, why don't you just take it on the chin like most people?" And I said, because that's the point. Most people do just take it on the chin. I'm not most people, and the police shouldn't be giving it on the chin in the first place. That's why I'm not taking it on the chin. Now, we thought that this was simply about notching up a statistic, which was bad enough. But then it turned out, we asked a few inquiring questions. Can this, initially, let's just roll it back a minute. Remember I said that they'd given me this they told me that there was this one limerick. Yeah. Okay. But this one limerick represented 30 other tweets. I wrote to the police and said, "Can I see the other 30 tweets?" And they said, "No." And I said, "Well, how am I supposed to learn, and how am I supposed to modify my behaviour if I don't even know what it is I've said?" They said, "Well, you know what you've said because you wrote the tweets." I said, "But I've written hundreds, thousands of tweets. Which ones are they?" And they said, "Well, we're not going to tell you." I thought, that's just nonsense. So I put in what's called a subject access request to the police, where I said, "Give me all data on myself, all data, everything, including the tweets." It took me 3 months to get a copy of the tweets. I didn't get a hold of the tweets until June. Now, 2 things here. One, when I read the tweets, I was frankly stunned, just stunned, because over that period of time, my mind had started playing tricks with me. Had I got drunk one night and tweeted, "Punch a tranny," or something like that, my wife, who'd shown great support of me, said, What did he tweet? What did he tweet? And I'd search back through my stuff. Well, I think, it might be on a deleted thread. I might have answered somebody on a thread that's now deleted, or I'm blocked. I don't know. I just don't know. But it's a long time for it to mess with your mind and think, I wonder. Because I've set the ball rolling with with the judicial review, etc., etc. I wonder if there's something in those tweets that I'm going to be really, really embarrassed about.
Yeah.
Then when they finally came through as a result of a subject access request, I read through them, and I did not sleep that night. I was so angry. I can't remember ever being as angry, because there was nothing. This is a sample of some of the tweets. Okay.
Yeah.
Sheffield women know the difference between lads and lasses. That's one. Another one was, I retweeted an article by Andrew Gilligan from the Sunday Times. Another one was simply, my son's at Oxford, and he rang me up about protesters at a Steve Bannon speech at the Union. And I'd simply tweeted, just had the son on from Oxford. Apparently the anti-Jenny Murray crowd are out baying and spitting at students going to see Steve Bannon. How is that? It doesn't even touch the subject of trans, except it does.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned Jenny Murray. And the mere mention of Jenny Murray, Dame Jenny Murray, who is a long-established BBC Woman's Hour presenter, was bullied out of going to speak at Oxford because she dared write a piece that simply suggested that trans women were not the same as biological women. That was it.
Yep.
So she was bullied from going to speak at the Oxford Union, and simply mentioning Jenny Murray was enough for it to be considered hate speech. Of course, there were some other more ripe tweets in there. I'd said, which I think has been quoted quite a lot, that I'd said I was assigned mammal at birth, but I identify as fish. Don't misspecies me, fuckers. And okay, it's choice language, but actually it does make a serious point. I was using existential humour, I suppose, to make a point, because if it's possible to simply identify yourself out of your sex and cross the boundary between male and female, why is it not possible to cross the boundary between mammal and fish? Why? It doesn't make any sense. If we are in the process of being able to identify out of a biological fact, why does it have to finish between male and female? And so for me, I was actually addressing what I consider to be a serious point, albeit with sardonic, fairly unsophisticated humour. But that was considered hate. Now, when they talk about hate, they say it's hate that is likely to escalate to crime. And the crime they have in mind is the stabbing of somebody at a bus stop. I find that to be just ludicrous. So we've got these 30 tweets that they came back. I was fuming about that. But also in the subject access request came my report, the incident log. And what was interesting is this. It says crime report on it.
Crime report?
Yeah, it's headed crime report,
right.
Big letters, crime report. And then below that it says offence, trans hate. And then below that it says suspect, Harry Miller. And then somewhere way down in the terms and conditions box, right down the bottom, it says category crime, non-crime.
Crime, non-crime?
Non-crime, yeah. Crime, non-crime, yeah. So if you're at all familiar with Orwell, you instantly start thinking about double speak, duck speak. It's just absolute nonsense. So now I've got my name attached to a crime report where I am named as the suspect for a offence that is a crime, non-crime. So this is beginning to feel a little bit serious now. So then we said, who else has got access to this report? Well, it depends. Like, all right, so some other people do have access to this report then. Who? Well, it's in the gift of the Chief Constable, but it can appear on an enhanced DBS check. A DBS check is basically a crime records check. So, well, under what circumstances would that be released as an enhanced DBS check? Well, if you applied for certain jobs. Well, what jobs? Well, if I applied to a school or a college or a university or anything that worked with vulnerable people at all, then that would be flagged up and it would appear on the pre-employment check. And I said, well, what do you think is going to happen when my application goes in and they pick up this bit of paper that's headed crime report? What do you think they're going to do? I'll tell you what I'm going to do if I see that. I'm going to tear up the application and just throw it in the bin.
Exactly.
I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to read through it and make a judgment and then hope that I spot the crime non-crime bit and then just dismiss it. I'm going to make a value judgment on whether to employ this person based on this. And what I see there is crime report. So actually, this has gone from being simply about notching up a statistic to having a very real world impact. So then you ask the question, right, is this just me? Am I just that one unlucky one? Izzy Lyons at the Telegraph did a bit of digging, and she came up, there have been 89, I think it was 87 or 89,000 of these crime non-crimes in the last 4 years. 87,000. There's been another report by another report, I can't remember who, it's gone up to 120,000.
I think it's 120 since 2014 or something like that.
Yes, in 2014, 120,000 people. Now, in that 120,000 people, I am sure there are some thoroughly nasty people whose details actually ought to be recorded somewhere, because it may well be that they are the next stabbers of somebody at a bus stop. It may be that. But in this country, in a civilised society, we don't capture everybody on the off chance that we're going to capture the right one somewhere. We don't do that.
Exactly.
That is simply wrong. That is the kind of behaviour that you expect from, I don't know, Cold War, Cold War police forces.
In fact, this is what the judge said. You know, this is what the headline was here. The judge implied, didn't he, that, or in fact said that we don't do this kind of thing in this country. This is Orwellian. We don't have a Stasi. You don't have a Gestapo. Any of that stuff.
Well, he said, we've never had a Stasi, a Gestapo, or a Checker. If he'd have picked one of those three, it would have been bad enough. But he picked three because the judge, Mr. Justice Knowles, who quite frankly is now the poster boy, the poster judge of radfems absolutely everywhere, because he spoke the truth. He spoke the truth.
Were you surprised?
I was surprised at I wasn't surprised at the judgment against Humberside, no. I thought that was, by any test of reasonableness, they had to be found to have broken, to have trampled all over our human rights. I could not see how they could possibly have gotten away with that at all. What surprised me was the weight of the judgment upon them. Yeah. I mean, out of all the words, out of all the images he could have picked, he picked Orwell, he quoted On Liberty by Mill, and then he referenced the Stasi, the Checker, and the Gestapo. I mean, it's a stunning judgment. He said that the witness that Humberside had presented, and whose details were all redacted, they were simply known as Mrs. B, that they were operating on the outer edges of rationality.
Right.
It was a scathing judgment. Now, what's interesting is, just imagine for a second, you're the police, you're the chief constable, you're the PCC, you're an officer, senior officer in Humberside, and you've had a High Court judge call you that. What would the rational response be, do you think? What you wouldn't expect is a traffic update about roadworks in Gull, followed by a statement that says, we've read the judgment and we're going to have a learning moment. Moving forward, we're going to have a learning moment.
A learning
moment, yeah, a learning moment. They've basically done the management two-step, which is reflect, 2, 3, move forward, 2, 3. And that's it. They've been called the Gestapo, the Stasi and the Checker. They've been likened to an Orwellian police force. And they think that the appropriate response is to have, moving forward, have a learning moment. Absolute nonsense. They've treated it as though they've been found guilty of trampling on somebody's daffodils in pursuit of a missing cat.
The thing is, I can't help feeling that, you took it, you weren't going to let this lie.
No.
So you took it right to where it should go, High Court. But there'll be a lot of people, I'd say almost maybe even the majority, who will be so intimidated. You're switched on enough to know when you look at the statement and it says crime, non-crime, and hate crime. A lot of people will just start to get frightened, and they'll just sort of just back away, just let them get on with it. I mean, this is the worrying thing, is it not? Hugely worrying.
It's worrying, but that is precisely what they're wanting to do.
Yeah.
They don't give you the law. They can't say what law you've broken. They don't even give you the evidence in my case. They just say back off, because if you don't back off, you are in danger of becoming a criminal. So the reasonable person backs off. But I think it was George Bernard Shaw who said that all hope rests with the unreasonable person in such circumstances. And I am the unreasonable person. I'm just bull-headed. One, I knew that I'd not tweeted anything awful, because I'm not awful. I don't hate trans people. I'm just not, I'm not that sort of person. I'm just simply not. Secondly, I'm an ex-police officer from Humberside, so the whole mystique of the police doesn't really wash with me.
Actually, as a former policeman, when you look at the police, you're dealing with the police now. Do you recognise what you see, or
no? I don't recognise it at all. I mean, it's absolute nonsense. Now, the vast majority of the police are doing a form of policing which is entirely recognisable to me. They're at the sharp end. They're doing a fantastic job. My issue is not with the police; it is with the thought police, who are a division of the actual police. This is what worries me. Only this week I found that the same PC who rang me up. Do you know what he was doing earlier this month?
what?
He was at a bakery in Humberside teaching the bakers about hate crime.
Oh dear.
Why would you do that? I mean, there's only two possibilities. Either bakers are very likely to go stab somebody, and I can't see that, or hit him with a hard flipping bread roll or something, I don't know. Or, more likely, and this is what I think, he's teaching them to be victims. He's teaching them to recognise victimhood. Why? Because the HCOG also says that a reduction in statistics is not an acceptable target. So they have to. The HCOG says they have to keep their statistics up. And it says it doesn't matter whether hate crime is going down, the statistics have to go up. So there's the motivation. They're going around teaching people to be offended.
Yes, exactly. Also in the case of the bakers, maybe, just in case they don't want to do a cake for somebody or something like that, those sort of cases as well. It could well be that.
It
might well be that.
Yeah, it might be that.
Thing is, so basically you won this part of the case, the judicial review, Harry, but the College of Policing was upheld, wasn't it? In other words, they misapplied their guidelines, isn't that right?
No.
No.
We took the College of Police to do judicial review and Humberside Police for this reason. Humberside's defence was we followed the guidance. We followed the national guidance. So we go, okay, well, who issued the national guidance? The College of Police. Okie dokie. In that case, we will take them to court as well for issuing the guidance, which Humberside followed. Now, what I would have expected was that the College of Policing, in order to protect their guidance, would have put some distance between their guidance and the actions of Humberside. They would have said, our guidance is correct, but you, Humberside Police, you didn't follow the guidance. That way we protect our guidance whilst throwing you to the dogs. But that's not what happened. The College of Police defended to the hilt the actions of Humberside, point to point. You couldn't blow a breath of wind between the two defendants at all. So we have this peculiar situation where Humberside say we followed the guidance. The college says we agree, you followed the guidance. The judge says yes, you followed the guidance. The guidance is legal, but you, Humberside Police, are thoroughly illegal.
Yeah.
Which leaves us in this quite strange and peculiar and almost, very illogical position, because 1 + 1 = 3 in this instance. So, I think the College of Police know that there's a problem, though, because they waved through our request to go direct to the Supreme Court. They didn't object. They've supported the application to go to the Supreme Court, because we think that they know there is a severe problem with the guidance. Now, of course, they're defending it, but I think they know there's an issue. I think this is a case of they want somebody higher up, the Supreme Court, to make the decision for them. That's what I think.
So what are you doing now? What is your next course of action then?
Our next course of action is to appeal to the Supreme Court. The judge, Mr. Justice Knowles, has given us a certificate to appeal to the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court only take, 11, 12 cases a year, I think, so they don't have to take our case. If they choose not to take our case immediately, then we'd take a step back and go to the Court of Appeal. Then the Court of Appeal may then say go to the Supreme Court. But we're hoping to leapfrog and go direct, because it's not only of national importance, actually, it's of international importance, because other countries around the world take the lead in terms of law from the UK, and I think everybody knows that. I mean, the judgment hadn't been out for half a day before there was a statement from Number 10. Everybody knows that needs looking at. Everybody.
We talked a bit earlier about the definition, which is at the root of all of this, really. I mean, the way that guidelines are applied, that's one thing, but the actual definition that you've already referred to of hate incident or a hate crime is this thing where there's all sorts of problems wrong with it, are there not? Yeah. And first of all, victim is used immediately. The word victim, as you said, you should at least be just a complainant, shouldn't you? Yeah. But a victim, it's already there. It's already kind of like loaded.
Yeah, it's all very loaded, yeah.
But it's in the perception of the victim that there is hostility.
Or any third party.
Or anybody else. Yeah. Or anybody else. Now, that means, in legal terms, anybody. Yeah. Someone watching this now can decide that this is some form of hate incident or something.
Exactly.
And they can report it. And that would be then on the statistics, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would be on the statistics. Yeah. In fact, you talk about irony. Mrs. B, who is the complainant in my case, published a statement anonymously 2 days ago in which they accused the judge of a hate incident.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you see, by their own logic, I guess, by their own skewed logic, I guess you can see it, can't you?
It is, because the guidance says there is mandatory recording. Yeah. Elsewhere, it says use common sense, but elsewhere, it says mandatory recording. So, which is it? Is it common sense or is it mandatory? Because it can't be both. Words mean something, and mandatory means mandatory. That's what it says. And also the definition of hate. If you look at the definition of hate, it includes a dislike of. That's
right. This is in the CPS sort of definition, isn't it? With hostility can mean, as you say, just simple dislike. Yeah. What does that mean?
I've no idea, but one of the things it does mean is this, that Momentum is a hate group.
Yes.
Because the Momentum make no apology at all for hating on Tories. So why is that not a hate? Why is that not? Why are they not a hate group?
You said before we started recording that this was a kind of, like a form of psychosis that we're with. I mean, it does seem to me to be that. There's a kind of madness going on, isn't there?
Well, Douglas Murray writes about it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He talks about the madness of crowds, and that's exactly what we've got here. We've got a form of utter madness where black is white, up is down, right is wrong. Everything is... Evidence can be no evidence.
Yeah.
That's what the guidance says. No evidence of the hate element is required for a hate incident or a hate crime. How can that be? How can it say no evidence is required? That's just nonsense. It's a heckler's charter. It's a lunatic's charter, quite frankly.
And Mrs. B, in my case, the judge was kind by saying that they were operating on the outer edges of rationality. I'd say they were just plain flipping nuts. And, you know, nutters are going to nutter. But what is really worrying is that the police thought it was a good idea to use the testimony of a raging lunatic.
That's because they've been on a course.
Yeah, exactly. But you read through the official victim statement, the evidence that Humberside presented, and it says Harry Miller is a bigot. And it rants and it says that I'm in a conspiracy with James Kirkup of the Spectator and Joni Walsh from the Telegraph. I'm running a hate group with them. And then it says quite bizarrely that 80 years ago I would have been persecuting the Jews. 40 years ago I would have been persecuting the blacks. 30 years ago I would have been persecuting homosexuals. Well, one, I wasn't alive 80 years ago. It may come as a surprise to you. And 30 years ago I was living with 2 homosexuals and I don't recall persecuting either of them. So it's just patent nonsense. And what is worrying is the police, with an entirely straight face, presented this as evidence. Now, there is what is known in Radfem circles and free speech circles as the Mr. Justice Knowles eye roll. Now, my understanding is that High Court judges aren't supposed to roll their eyes, but the provocation in this instance was such that even he, with his steely, judgy self, could not but help himself, and his eyes almost rolled into eternity at that.
What was the reaction? What has the reaction been on the whole, Harry, of the media to your case? I know that we've got the press on the one hand, but say the broadcast media, people who've had your, are they broadly sympathetic, or have you found yourself being exasperated by it?
I've been exasperated. I was exasperated by my local BBC, who you know, you go and give an interview to them, and then they cut the interview right down, so you're basically saying very little, and then they would have a local trans person on who would be going on about how jokes can be so cruel. I'm like, well, I don't recall writing it. I'm thinking, I didn't do any jokes. I was part of a discussion, but hey, that's local news for you. But then the press, by and large, has been incredibly sympathetic. Last week, I was on PM. I think I was the top story on PM straight after the judgment. And what stunned me is that the interviewer, I can't remember his name, all he wanted to talk about was why I wasn't more kind, why I wasn't kinder. Right? The story is not about kindness here. The story is about a police force that's been called the Gestapo, the Stasi, and the Cheka. And you want to talk about why can't we all be kind? That's why I say there's a collective madness.
Yes.
There is a collective madness, and the BBC, in certain instances, are part and parcel of that madness.
Oh, without question. What has been the kind of effect of this on you? I mean, have you had, has it been sort of like a few long, dark, nights, as it were, of the soul? Or?
You talk about a long night of the soul. I did. I had one very long, dark night of the soul, which was in October, and it occurred when the witness statements from Humberside came in. Up until that point, I knew I was in a fight of a little man, me, against a very large organisation, Humberside, and then an even larger organisation, the College of Policing. But still, in my naivety, I thought that we were fighting fairly. Okay, it was a flyweight against a heavyweight, but still, we were going to be fighting fairly. Then I read the statements, and my heart dropped out my arse, the truth be told, because they lied. Just plain, straightforward lie. Lie number one was that PC Gull's statement said, I did not say I need to check your thinking. Well, he did. He did. Absolutely he did. strike me down, strike my family down. He said it. We had a full discussion about 1984. No doubt about it. Second lie. He didn't say about fetuses growing the wrong body parts, and that's what being trans is. Again, 100% lie. Absolute lie. Third lie was that it was a phone call which lasted no more than 20 minutes. Except I rang him, remember, and it was a 34-minute phone call. So another lie, verifiable lie. But even if it was only a 20-minute phone call, what he said in that phone call wouldn't last 2 minutes, let alone 20. What else did we discuss? Did we discuss the football? Did we plan a family holiday together? Did we ask about each other's kids? What did we talk about for 20 minutes? Even if your 20 minutes was right, you can't fill it. My account, you can fill all 34 and some. So at that point, I realised, oh my God, not only are they heavyweights, but they've got a knife down the trouser pocket and a horseshoe in the glove. And I was very nearly broken. Very, very nearly broken.
Well, it sort of shakes one's whole confidence in, what we've grown up believing in a way about our institutions, doesn't it?
Well, like I said to you earlier, I don't look good in a tinfoil hat. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I will back the police absolutely 100% to the hilt. I think by and large police officers are good. I think our police force is good. I am absolutely prime pro police. And to see absolute lies being presented for the High Court stunned me. I had a very near breakdown. It was October. I just lost it. I took my car to the Humber Bridge. I got out of my car and I started walking across the Humber Bridge, and I looked over and thought, God, that would be tempting. Just stop it all now. I think it would be wrong to say that I was on the point of jumping, but I knew I was in a really bad place. So what I did was I just kept walking. I decided, my rational brain said, just keep walking, get as far away from that bridge as is possible. And I walked and I walked and I walked. I was wearing a pair of gardening shoes and an old jumper and a gilet. And I walked and walked, and I was still walking at 12:30 at night. I'd walked 30 miles, and eventually I got picked up by my wife, found me, and the police found me, and I was frozen solid, absolutely frozen solid, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just out of it. My wife took me home. I eventually got warm, and then I woke up the following morning, and my wife said, "Do you want to give up?" And I said, "We can't, can we? We just can't." And she said, "You're right, we can't give up. We've come this far, we've got to keep going." And we did. But you talk about the long night of the soul. That was a long night. That was a really long night, because I'm a tough guy. Right? I'm a tough fella. But the police and the Humberside Police and the College of Policing and Humberside lying, straightforward lying, it absolutely ripped my world apart. It really, really did. I was not expecting that.
When you stood outside the High Court last week, I hope you had a different feeling.
I loved it. Yeah, it was a superb feeling, because there was the personal vindication, of course, which is good for my family, because you don't want a family member to be associated with hate and this, that, and the other, even if they know there's nothing in it. It's really nice to have a High Court judge authenticate that. But more, I think, for my organisation, Fair Cop, the support I've had from the Fair Cop members, which includes serving police officers and a whole bunch of really, really good people who've got to remain anonymous, obviously.
And the public, presumably.
And for the public, because I knew that this was a watershed moment, and I knew that the language that Mr. Justice Knowles had used was going to send shockwaves through absolutely everything. I mean, to have a High Court judge say what he said, the judgment is 65 pages long. There are something like 290 paragraphs in it. The paragraph he chose, I think it's paragraph 279. That's the bit that he read out. Right. Gestapo, Stasi, Checker. I'm like, get in there, Justice Knowles.
And this is the first case of its kind, isn't it? I mean, this is a landmark.
Absolutely landmark case, yeah. You say it, and even now saying it, I'm thinking, I'm looking at myself thinking, how did I end up here? My life is about walking the dogs and doing a bit with the business and playing Candy Crush and watching Netflix. It's not about changing the world, but that's what we're doing.
Well, Harry, thank you so much for telling us chapter and verse on that. I mean, I think it's a remarkable story, and congratulations, and also all the very best for what you do next.
Absolutely. We've got a lot going on. We've got the Supreme Court. And the little teaser, this story with Humberside might not be over yet.
All right, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Harry. Thanks for watching. Please do subscribe, won't you? And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.